infinite regress of things. I didn't say that. I said two things. I said A, there cannot be an infinite regress of causes, and or B, there cannot be a regress of dependent things, contingent things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you defend yourself?
Sure. So it depends on what theory of time you have, right? So you can basically have an eternally existing block of time, right, where causation is something which is an illusion of the illusion of time, right? That breaks that argument completely.
Not really.
It does.
Because mine's an atemporal argument.
Because the things don't cause each other.
No, I
right?
appreciate
That's
it.
illusory, right?
No, but causation doesn't have to
Don't
be.
interrupt me, mate. Not after I've listened to you patiently, right? We'll play the game, okay? So that breaks that argument, right?
That's a great argument.
Listen, I heard you say so many things which I think are wrong, right? And I was like, getting your perspective, all right? So just try and do the same, okay? So basically, without temporal causation, right? You can't have causation. We have blocks of time. That causation is illusory, right? And time makes that illusion appear to us. Okay, that's well known to be theory of time, which breaks the causal dependency. The other thing is that you can have basically a circularity, right? So you can basically have a circularity which is just continuing, where you can have time, you can have causal dependencies, but they basically don't infinitely regress because simply they cycle. So you know of like bubble universes, right? And the like. So the notion that you require this being and that you can prove it's the case is broken by two: A, by an interpretation of time, B, by an interpretation of cosmology, but C, also that you don't know, right? You exist within a universe that you and I will admit to each other we don't really understand the full physics of, right? We don't. You admit that we have, that could be an acausal quantum world, and we don't understand how it relates to this one. So to say it's absurd that there can't be something which doesn't depend on another.
No, but what
I'll finish because I'm not going to monologue. But basically, when we've admitted that we don't have a final theory of physics, to say something about physics is absurd, you know you've said.
All right, can I respond to you?
Go ahead.
So when I said and or, it was an important conjunctive element to my argument. Because when I said now that you cannot have an infinite regress of causation and or dependency. Now when I say dependency, what I meant was contingency. And contingency is different to causation, in so much as the definition of contingency is basically reliance. Okay? Now, aspects of one thing relying on another thing doesn't actually depend on time whatsoever. There's no way to prove that. Whereas causation... No, hold on. So what I'm saying is, my argument is not a temporal argument. It does not require time to be made. Ontologically, my argument can be made in abstract terms without any reference to time whatsoever. So what you have to disprove is my argument now, specifically the argument about contingency, is that there cannot be an infinite regress of contingent things relying upon other things ad infinitum, without there being an existence of an independent thing through which all other dependent things can depend upon, and that thing depends upon nothing, because that would constitute the foundation for all other dependent things existing.
Yeah.
What you have to show is why. Because remember, what you said. Number one was the time element, which I've said to you is nothing to do with.
You can't show that
my argument.
it be time, the blocks of time depend on.
No, I don't care about time.
You can't show.
No, I'm not making a time-based argument.
It doesn't matter.
Good.
But on any theory of time, you can't show that one moment depends upon another.
I'm not saying moment. I haven't said this.
You said dependency.
But I didn't say moment.
So that dependency needn't exist. You
hold on.
Prove that it does
you
exist.
just said moment.
You can't prove that one thing depends upon another.
Oh, yes, I can prove that actually. Yes.
Go on.
All right. So you depend upon your parents for your existence.
Why?
Because had your parents not consummated their marriage or whatever it is, you wouldn't exist.
They haven't consummated their marriage.
Or whatever it may have been.
They haven't consummated their marriage.
So you don't depend upon anything for your existence.
No, we're just running your argument.
You don't depend upon anything for existence.
You're saying I depend on something which happened in the past.
I didn't say anything about past.
You're saying my parents are going to have sex in the future.
No, I didn't say anything about past or future. You're putting these words into my mouth.
So you're saying my parents could have sex in the future, and that would make me...
No, I haven't said that. So now you're poisoning the well because you know.
I'm asking.
You said things. Now, how do I prove that things are dependent upon other things?
I'm waiting to hear how you do that.
Yeah, I've just given you a cosmological example.
No, I'm asking you how you do that.
I've just shown you. Are you dependent upon something for your existence?
So if I say no, right, you're going to prove that I am.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, because had it not been for X amount of variables...
Had it not been, that's the past tense.
Hello?
You're addressing time.
I'm not talking about time.
Without addressing time.
Prove
that I'm dependent.
But cosmological examples in this world are always going to be in reference to time.
Well, there you go.
No, but
so when you tell me you're not making reference to time,
and
then you say cosmological arguments are always going to reference time.
In this world,
you have contradicted yourself.
Is this universe?
Conversations in this universe.
Is this
Here we're stuck in Speaker's Corner.
Is this universe all that there is?
So you've contradicted yourself.
Is this universe all that there is?
Sorry?
Is this universe all that there is?
You're making an argument in this universe.
I'm asking you, is this universe all that there is?
You're saying in this universe you're only ever going to be able to make a temporal argument.
Is this universe all that there is?
You just said in this universe that you're only going to be able to make a temporal argument.
If you want to make a...
You're in this in this universe.
Fine, no reference to time.
Not to make a temporal
no reference to time. No reference to time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me make the ontological case.
Okay.
Yeah? That 2 plus 2 equals 4.
Am I supposed to look impressed? I don't know what.
No, hello. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yes? So 4, in this case, is contingent upon 2 plus 2. Let me give you an analogy, another one, to help you understand it.
That's proof they contingency.
No, hold on. Is there any time there?
That God exists.
Is there any time there?
Yes.
Where's time in 2 plus 2 equals 4?
Okay. If you basically had 4, okay, and it was just 4, right? You had not had the addition of 2 plus 2 right, prior. It was just 4. It would be contingent upon the addition of 2 plus 2.
No, I'm saying 2 plus 2 equals 4. I'm giving you the whole equation.
No, it has to come before it for it to be contingent upon it.
Before
if 4 things had always existed, they wouldn't be contingent on 2 plus 2.
Where's time in mathematics? Sorry, where's time in mathematics?
Well, that's the whole point, right? So that's why 2 plus 2 equals 4.
There's no time in mathematics.
Right? There is actually.
Where?
So basically, that's why you have a temporal sequence in an algorithm. If you write the algorithm backwards,
hold on. Right? Mathematics exists without reference to time. Would you agree with this?
You're talking about contingents, right? Which is a dependent on something. You're saying 4 is contingent on 2 plus 2. I'm telling you 4 needn't be contingent on 2 plus 2. You've not proven a necessary contingency. You're trying to prove a necessary contingency.
Say that again?
Right? Okay. You're basically, before we get to how Allah can know everything, right? We're trying to prove that He definitely does exist.
Yes.
Right? By contingency. That definitely it is the case that these things. So when you say 4, definitely depends on these two things. I'm saying 4.
Hold on. What I'm showing you is because the point is you said you can only talk about this universe, yeah?
No, I didn't say that. You said in this universe.
In this universe, yes.
You said.
Yes.
I'll just rephrase exactly what you said. You said in this universe you can only make temporal arguments because you referenced that.
Yes.
And I said fine.
Yes.
Then you have a problem, right?
Yes. If you're making cosmological argument alone. Well, but I'm not making a cosmological argument.
You're making a dependency argument.
No, but okay.
Existing doesn't depend on 2 plus 2.
I see the interrogation. Can I respond to it, yeah? So, my argument can be made ontologically as well as cosmologically. If it's made if the contingency, I'll admit to you, if the contingency argument is made cosmologically with reference to things in this universe, then it has to be made with examples, not necessarily with conclusions, but with examples which are contingent. So for example, if I talk about you like I did, yeah, you're a contingent being, you would agree, but you're saying that's with reference to time. So you exist with reference to, you exist in time, but you're also contingent. What I'm saying is that it's possible for entities to exist without reference to time. So for example, mathematics is a realm, or it's a discipline that can be done, if you like, or exists without reference to time. Same as logic itself. Logic itself is something, the rules of logic can be understood, can be demarcated without reference to time. So not everything that exists ontologically or metaphysically, extramentally, needs to exist with reference to time. Therefore, I can still make the contingency argument, because contingency as a concept, as an understood concept, could be made without reference.
Absolutely right.
Yes.
Absolutely right. But you have to prove it. Anyone can make an argument.
What do you mean prove it?
Well, that's what you're trying to do.
Yes.
You're trying to prove
So
that
you agree with
Allah
this point, yeah?
can know everything.
No, but good. So we agree on this point, right? So we agree on the.
We'd agree. I mean, it would be kind of ridiculous if after all this time we arrived at the no, I don't think something can depend on something. I mean, that's perfunctory.
No, not only that.
We agree that contingencies
Perfect,
exist,
but yes.
you're setting out to prove that Allah definitely does exist.
But what I'm sure, yes.
And moreover,
Perfect.
To prove that He knows everything.
But what you also said here, which is very good.
The mountain.
Good. No, it's not the mountain. I think you're going to come to it. You're an intelligent man, and I believe you're going to come.
I'm a genius. You're in a hopeless cause, but you're giving it a good go.
Yeah, thank you. So if I'm going against a genius like you, then hopefully I'll learn, because I always like to learn more.
I mean, we have different worldviews.
Yes, good.
I'll do what I can.
Okay. So what I was going to say was this: is that basically
sharpen each other.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that basically, when it comes to so what we've established is that dependent things exist, yeah? And also, we've established that things can exist atemporally, yeah? Like mathematics, etc. Now, what I'm saying is that...
We have conjectured. We don't, I mean, the existence of mathematics could be no more than saying that we believe it's the case.
But the existence of mathematics is, we can all say, we can do, mathematics can be realized, or can be understood, or can be conceptualized without reference to temporality.
It's a concept. That's the point. So conceiving of something doesn't mean that it's actual.
Good. Now going back to realism, anti-realism, idealism.
But here's the point.
Yeah.
We're just basically saying that it's possible to conceive of things, but we have to do much more in the case of Allah. We can't just say it's possible to conceive that all-knowing being exists. You're like, dude, I'm going to prove it.
No, good. But what I'm saying to you is this: it's not only something which you can conceive. Now it depends on what vision you have. Like, what are you, an idealist, or are you a dualist, or a materialist? I don't know. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that already we have, we've kind of established that materialism, or naturalism, if you like, in a clearest sense of or the strictest sense of the word, couldn't be a consistent way of understanding the world, because we've said that mathematics is something which exists extramentally.
I mean, I think naive realism, or a kind of naive physicalism, but I don't. But I mean, that's like philosophical detritus. No one really believes in that stuff, you know, since the collapse of probably logical positivism.
So what's your view on it? What's your
naive realism or something?
Yeah.
Like that?
What's your
what is my metaphysical view? What are my metaphysics?
Yes.
I think I'm troubling me for you. I'm hard philosophical skeptic.
Yeah, but would you identify as a realist, anti-realist, idealist, naturalist, or where would you go in those camps?
See, but that's the whole point. I mean, I'm skeptic to the point of empiricism, which is what makes your job so hard, right? Because convincing a skeptic is super, super difficult, right?
Okay.
Because you have to build the foundations and show they're true, and then build basically the case, show that God exists, and then build the omniscient case. And so, what I'm asking you to do is to do that from the ground zero. So, but I am actually that way. I'm pretty much close to a Thuric skeptic. So,
but I would.
But I'm like you in this sense.
I would put.
I'm like you in one sense. Last thing I'll say is that I would assign certain probabilities.
Okay.
In a hazy fashion to certain things being the case, but you're in a very different camp, which is a claim of absolute epistemological certainty, which I think is like Mount Everest with flip-flops, right?
Depends
so
on where you
I
are.
admit your job is much harder, but that's why.
But you're saying
like
that probabilistic arguments are epistemologically justifiable from your perspective, that you could make a probabilistic argument and you...
Might be. That's the whole point. I'm a Thuric skeptic, so I would assign a probability to that being
the case.
But
when you're making that probabilistic argument, where would your starting point... Or if someone was making a probabilistic argument to you, where would your starting point be in terms of substance theory? Where would it be? Would you start off as a dualist position, or an idealist position, or a naturalist position, or a realist position, or anti-realist position?
A curing position, right? When someone tells me that they're certain that there is a God who knows absolutely everything, I'm like, I need to listen to this guy. Because either he has no idea what he's talking about, or he does, and I need to pay very close attention because, it's very difficult, epistemologically speaking, to provide demonstrations of really very much.
Yes.
Like you've read Islamic theology, right? So you know about the struggles of Ibn Sina, Ibn Sina, or Ibn Taymiyyah, or Al-Ghazali, the deliverance from skepticism,
Yes.
not deliverance from error,
Yes.
right? Many of the greatest philosophers in Islam, like many of the greatest philosophers which followed them, ran into hard skepticism,
Yep.
and it defeated many,
Yes.
right? Who
Yeah.
then turned. They didn't lose their faith,
Yeah.
but they lost the belief that they could really prove by, as Ghazali says, by a concatenation of proofs and arguments that this is the case. But you're saying by concatenation of proof and arguments, you can do what Ghazali failed at.
No, but then he
And
came
so
to the conclusion.
my ears go,
because Ghazali changed his mind afterwards on the issues.
Yes, but
Kind of
why?
like René Descartes. He went
Yeah,
through the same meditation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They're so similar.
Yeah, yeah.
And so few people get that.
Yeah.
That's impressive that you know.
Yeah. So I was going to say
But
that
how did Ghazali come to that conclusion?
he went through a skeptic process. Yeah.
But how did he come to the conclusion that he was still a believing Muslim?
He's the one who made the common William Lane Craig Hughes kind of cosmological argument.
I mean, it wasn't original to him. It's not the argument.
Yeah.
That
Well, he's the one
rescued
who
his
put it
faith.
in that way.
So basically, he wrote Munkida min al-Dalal. So this
Deliverance from everyone.
Yeah, and basically, he has this breakdown. He's this genius. You know, he goes on the sabbatical. He's in the middle of teaching his students.
Yes.
Are they on your team or mine? I think. Yeah.
I don't think they're on anyone's team.
Yeah, really, their own team. Yeah. So basically, at the end of that book, and I've only read the English, right?
Yeah.
He says this wasn't by this great logical process of proofs and errors and so on, which he was a master at.
Yes,
right?
yes.
He
Essentially
wrote like.
spiritualism.
Yes.
Yeah.
He basically
Yeah.
he looks at the Sufis.
Yes,
And
yes,
he says somehow they approach God, but
Yes.
they don't do it. They do it as if in a dream. Right,
Yeah.
and so he says it's by this. He actually says the sweet light of faith that Allah caused to reappear in my heart.
And I hope that that sweet light of faith comes into your heart as well,
Dude,
man.
I'm a skeptic. Never say never.
Never say never, bro.
Never
Look,
say-
it's been a
We're-
pleasure.
We're not done. You didn't get to.
Because I need to pray. But okay.
Oh, okay.
But do you know? Here's. I'll be honest with you. I have a sneaky suspicion that you already know this proof.
What?
And you already look. I have a sneaky suspicion.
I have. Okay.
Look, you do.
Well, what do you do?
You've read Ghazali. You've read
Go and
Al-Muqidh
pray,
min
go and
al-Dalal.
pray. I've read everything. Go and pray, and let's have a little.
What
Finish off.
is it time to pray now? Is it Maghrib time yet? Is it Maghrib time yet?
If
Okay,
you
we'll give
need
it 5
to,
times.
and then let's just quickly finish off.
Okay, let's finish off now. I think there's a bit of time. Go on.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we have some names here, right? I mean, like, I came from the Western tradition where you hear these names of the Muslim philosophers.
Yes.
And you start with this kind of...
By the way, can I ask a question? What did you study? You studied philosophy, yeah?
Studied everything.
Did you study it formally?
I've studied everything. I'm an artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I've studied cancer, neuroscience.
Wow.
I make films. Started 2 technology companies.
Yeah.
You're up against impossible opposition.
Oh my
But
God.
you've done well. I think
Oh my
I think you've done well. The point is this.
Yeah.
The point really is to say that I came from what I think is what you'd call an Orientalist, right? A kind of like post-colonial, quite racist, like caring about these Muslim philosophers, right? And I picked these up like, yeah, Muslim philosophers, so let's see. And I was like, Descartes, like Immanuel Kant. I was like, these are some of the best thinkers that we've had. And I'm only reading the translations, but I can see how sharp someone like Ibn Taymiyyah is, any of the great thinkers, Omar Khayyam, Ghazali, others, and I was just incredibly impressed. Not with Ghazali as a philosopher, but with Ghazali would clean up at Speaker's Corner because he was so good at disassembling people's positions, but he was so good at disassembling his own. That was his problem. And so his devout Ash'ari belief tended much more Sufi. The Ghazali that most Muslims admire, I think, is a Ghazali that's the first 40 years of his life, right? And so that's why I ask you the question because
but you know then.
You have the benefits that he didn't, right? You have like all of modern knowledge. You have like Google, and you have many people around you. You have the Hamza tortoises and these guys who are all, the divine reality. That's quite the claim, but not one Ghazali would have made. And so that's why I just,
I respect where you're coming from now. But once again, I think basically the argument I'm most convinced with from the literature is an argument made by Ibn Sina, Avicenna. Okay. So I've written a book called Kalam Cosmological Arguments.
You've written a book?
Yeah, I've written a book on it. It's actually been peer reviewed as well.
That's a journal.
That it's been reviewed. It's been reviewed by because I was doing at that time. When I say peer reviewed here, I should be clear. Some journals need to be peer reviewed by 2 things, and I bring it back with like amendments and stuff. Yeah. But this is because I was writing this as part of my one of my master's degrees. I was doing it in SOAS.
What are your masters in? Don't tell me if you don't want to. But anyway.
Yeah, it's fine. It's no problem.
Okay. So you wrote a book on
Kalam Cosmological Arguments. And so my teacher, his name was Emin Shahada. He's basically he's one of the editors of Brill. I'm not sure if you know Brill. Yeah. So he was a great teacher. I learned a lot from him for a long time. And then when he was teaching me, one of the things I really fell in love with, to be honest with you, was Ibn Sina's argument. Because we went through all of those kind of classical scholars, and one of the ones that I felt was, I don't agree with him theologically, but I felt as a philosopher,
his theology is
it's not
unrecognizable to
to Muslims. But that philosophy, and I think that deep down, Al-Ghazali and Ibn Taymiyyah and everyone that came after him recognized the genius, and they cleaned up the theological aspects, but they took the arguments. In my opinion. So people like Al-Ghazali, they actually took the arguments of Avicenna. So the argument basically that I'm making to you is his argument, not mine. And it's the argument of, basically it's called Burhan al-Siddiqeen, or the argument he makes in a book called Al-Isharat al-Tanbihat, or pointers and kind of reminders, which is extant now. It's translated, I think, as well. Peter Adamson has some good stuff in it in English language, which you can consult. So basically the argument is that he says about contingency, he says the same thing as I said. You can't have an infinite regress of causes or an infinite regress of, and by the way, he was an eternalist, right? So he believes in the eternal universe, but he says that there's a difference between believing an infinite regress of time and an infinite regress of causes. So he and other people believed in an infinite regress of things. Like Ibn Taymiyyah believed in perpetual pre-creation, which in necessity
cyclical creation and destruction.
So not destruction, but creation in the past, perpetual in the past. Anyway,
you mean like so an infinite regress of Allah's evolving of
Ibn Taymiyyah basically believed in something called hawadith la awwala laha, which means that God continued to create perpetually into the past. So there was no beginning, if you like. So he was, in many ways, he was similar to the eternalist.
I've read like 3 different opinions about what Ibn Taymiyyah's opinions were about.
He wasn't
the creation of the prophet, the first prophet, Adam, and I think he changed his views over the course of his life.
On this issue, that's the only thing I came across in his book called Ta'arud bil Aqli wal Naql. I mean, to be honest with you, he's written a few books, but this seems to be his opinion. Because how do you know what Ibn Taymiyyah's final opinion was through his student Ibn Qayyim, basically. He changed his opinion on a few things, but basically he believed in perpetual creation and pre-eternally, and so he wasn't an eternalist, but he believes in an infinite regress of things. Ibn Sina believes in an infinite regress of time, so in a sense, an infinite or an infinity of time. So he believed in the same thing that Aristotle believed in, Farabi believed in, Kindi believed in. But the point is that they all rejected an infinite regress of causation. Like even Aristotle rejected it, and Farabi, Aristotle, Plato, I think as well. Avicenna definitely rejected it. The Jews rejected it, like Maimonides, etc. Aquinas rejected it. So I haven't actually seen anything in the medieval literature, going back to the Hellenistic times, of anyone who said that they believe in an infinite regress of causation. I've not seen that. I've seen them believe in infinite regress of things perpetually into the past, and so on, but not of causation particular. So the argument he's making is
there is the cyclical, eternal birth and death, which is never ends. So it's basically just a loop. It appears eternal to us.
Yeah, but that's an eternalist view, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but the point is, it isn't infinitely regressive into the past.
Yeah.
It basically is
occurring
and arriving back in the future.
But eternalists like that believed in infinite regression.
So that's Hindus.
Yeah. I haven't looked into it.
That's a polytheist view. Like a Vishnu. Well, it's also the Taoist view. That basically.
But would they say that there's an infinite regress of causes as well?
Sorry?
Would they say there's an infinite regress of causation?
There was just an eternal circle.
Because, like I said to you before, Ibn Taymiyyah and Avicenna both believed in infinite something.
But they were linear.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but the Taoist view or the Hindu view is of an endless circle of life and death.
Yes. Okay. But then once again, it's not necessarily causation. If that's, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
He's talking about the recreation, I think.
Yeah.
Reincarnation. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But so Avicenna had this view that he basically talked about the infinite regress of dependent things, and he says that's impossible to do. Right. So his argument, basically, his proof was this, and I think it's the strongest one we have, in my opinion. Yeah. He basically said, Leibniz took over and done his contingency argument with it, but I think it's from him, yeah? Because that's something that genuinely didn't come from the Greeks. That was innovative. He said the contingency argument. I don't think it came from the Greeks. There's nothing like it from the Greeks. He says that this is one thing that's a contribution. He says that basically, if you have a series of things, all of which are contingent, you have two possibilities. Either that series itself is independent, or that it depends on something external and independent. That's the only two possibilities. Because he says you can't have a series of things.
Plato made that argument, just by the by.
But I don't think he made it in the way that he made it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because Aristotle did it when he was talking about the physics and the metaphysics. When I looked at the works of Aristotle and his references to Plato,
there's something called a Thomistic argument, which is basically about an original causation, which is very much like the thing which has no contingency, right? The uncontingent cause.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like a Thomistic argument.
But the interesting thing about this is that. So here's why I always make the argument in two ways, yeah. Because Ibn Tufail, who's another guy, who's also kind of not known, it's not traditionalist in that sense, not normative within the Islamic circles.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, he said that there's two things. He said you can either make an argument from causation or an argument from contingency.
Yeah.
And he says those two things are not the same.
Yeah.
He says, but you should make both of them at the same time. Yeah, and then if this one doesn't work, then this one has to work. Okay. That's why I tried to do that with. Basically, it's like, I'm not getting this myself. So I'm saying to you, look.
That's why you said and or.
That's right. So this is not me. I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants, in that sense. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So.
And you're tall.
And I'm tall already. So basically, the argument is that the contingent things can either. So the series of contingent things, if it's infinite, it can either be independent or dependent. If it's dependent, it needs an independent. If it's not, then how could it exist? So it has to be. So basically, it has to be either an independent outside of it, or it has to be the independent itself. Now, there's a secondary argument that's connected to that. The argument that is secondarily made it's called Hujjat al-Tarkib, or the argument of parts. So basically, that there can't be like a series of things.
It's like a Zeno's paradox.
Yeah. So in the sense that
you basically just can't reduce something down because there's an infinite number of parts never amount to anything.
But then therefore the parts. So for example, that series is made out of parts, and the parts depend upon itself. Anything that's made out of parts is dependent. Basically, that's the idea. Anything that's made out of parts is dependent. The series is made out of parts, therefore the series is dependent. Therefore, what we need is something which is independent and it's not made out of parts.
As long as it's linear.
Yes.
As long as it goes back progressively. But this is why the Taoists and the like never had that problem. Because they... You know, you come here a lot, and I know you believe in your religion, sincerely, but you would admit that there's a little bit of you that wants some attention.
Yes.
You're good, but not as much as that guy. Like, me too, right? I have to admit the same, but just be like... I don't know what that's about. Anyway, so last thing I'd like to say to you, which is just like a kind of personal, kind of general state of the world kind of question. The world seems in a less good place, even though you don't remember me, than a couple of years ago when we debated. Like, there seems to me so many crises of knowledge, trust of information, news, fear of new technology, artificial intelligence. Just the world is changing out of kind of all perspective. The first world countries, if I can use that, insert whatever the kind of like politically correct term is, are becoming progressively less religious, it seems.
How do you feel
about the state of the world and the state of Islam as it engages with modernity? So by modernity, I mean, let's forget the new atheists, and they're gone now, right? There's kind of like a more kind of like sensible, I'd hope you agree, a less shrill kind of just, we're all trying to get along and make sense of the world together, right? Sam Harris is not beating, or Chris Fitch is not beating the lectern anymore. How do you think of how the state of the world, Islam, atheism, and the kind of general sense of chaos that people apprehend?
One thing is that in the Western Hemisphere, like, and especially in the western part of Europe and America, there's two things which are on the rise: Islam and atheism. And that seems to be, it's quite like an ironic set of affairs that both of those things are on the rise. Thank you. Do you want? You can take it. I don't want it.
Really?
Yeah, here. Thank you.
We should be wrestling here. That's like slap me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both those on the rise.
Both of them on the rise.
Much faster, I think, than okay.